In my last video, I took 3 Pokemon from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and reimagined them as if they were released back in Gen 1. Since you guys seem to like that video so much, I've decided to do more of these and, spin it off as its own mini-series. Hi, my name is Thomas, and welcome to the world of Pokemon. Today, we're going to take a trip into the Kingdom of Galar. Some might even say that it's a United Kingdom. Join me as we peer into an alternate reality. What if Pokemon Sword and Shield were released back in 1996? As always, the goal for these videos is not to fix these designs. There's nothing necessarily wrong with them. I just think it's fun to observe the differences between the old Pokemon designs and the new design philosophy. There's a lot to love with how new Pokemon are designed. It's just a fun little what-if scenario, a fun speculative thing, So let's start off with our first Pokemon for today, which is Grookey. Grookey is a grass monkey. He's got a bit of a musical theme going on, groove monkey, I think is what the name etymology is trying to go for. He has a drumstick that he stashes on his head in his original design, but of course he has these leaves on top of his head as well. For my redesigns, I made his proportions more monkey-like, give him kind of a lanky body type, more skinny. I also made his ears bigger. I know that his ears were already big in the original art, but I just made them rounder instead of like this pointy thing. Here are some of my initial sketches for Grookey. The main thing that's different about all of them are the eyes. Initially I went with something that's more similar to the original art, like cutesy rounded eyes. And yeah, I also went with one that's like closer to how the original, what the starter's eyes look like for the rest of the Pokemon. I try to make it a point that I don't keep using the same eye style for every one of these Pokemon. Although I feel like all of the starters from Gen 1 and 2 do have the same eyes. There's like a point of criticism where, okay, if I can change it, I should probably change it to something else, if that makes sense. Just because I don't want it to look too repetitive if we keep doing starters for each one of these videos. As always with these redesigns, one of the things that I like to change are the eyes. And I try to go with something that's a little more reminiscent of the original Gen 1 look. I changed the top of his head to be a little grass bush instead. There's no real reason for this, I just wanted to variate from the original design. In hindsight, I could have gotten away with just giving him one stick, but my concept for this is like these are drumsticks instead of like the gong drumstick thing. But I already drew this in and it's gonna be hard for me to start over, but oh well, he's a drummer in the future, so yeah. Next up, we've got Scorbunny. Scorbunny is a fire rabbit. I think its name is really clever, I think you can take it a couple of ways, Scorbunny as in score like football, or scorch because it's a fire type. Yeah, I just think that it's really clever in that way. I kept Scorbunny's cheese slice on its face. I know that this is kind of like a thing with modern starter Pokemon, but I think in the case of Scorbunny, it makes sense because you can take this as if it's like a bandage on its face. Scorbunny is meant to be like a football player, or an average football fan. Usually they have injuries and stuff like that, or you could interpret this as face paint even. So yeah, I think that for the case of Scorbunny, it makes sense versus Fuecoco. Here are some of my initial sketches for Scorbunny. The first one I did was like much closer to Scorbunny's original design, with like a thin body that I based off of Meowth. I felt like they were close to each other in terms of body shape. But I don't know, when I did this, even though I changed the eyes of Scorbunny, it kind of seemed to me like Scorbunny still looked practically the same and does not look like a classic Pokemon at all, which is why I started to pivot and experiment with other body types. So I thought, which Pokemon reminds me of a rabbit in Gen 1? Pikachu was the obvious one, even though Pikachu is not meant to be a rabbit. He's meant to be a Daifuku, which is a mochi ball with red bean paste. Basically, it's food. I don't know. Pikachu's ears give me the impression of a bunny. So that's where I really based the design off of, and that's where the design kind of took a life on its own, really. Amongst the three that I made, I think that Scorbunny is my favorite. I gave him a furry chest and a furry tail in the shape of a burning flame. I elongated its foot because I wanted to emphasize that it's a Pokemon that kicks, because, you know, this is a football Pokemon. And lastly, I gave it shorts to further emphasize the sporty football look. Lastly, we've got Sobble. Sobble is supposed to be some sort of sad water lizard. I think that the sad emotion, you know, crying, is a big part of the original Sobble character design. So, you know, its name is literally Sob plus Bubble. One of the clever things that's part of the original design is the blush near its eyes. It kind of looks like a tear, so I kept that for my version. There's also this clever little faux eyebrows in the middle of its eyes, kind of like the lighter face print thing on it. You know, I did a couple iterations of this. One of my initial sketches is like, you know, I thought, okay, Gen 1 lizard, who could we pattern this off of? The initial thing that popped into my head was Charmander, and so this Sobble looks very much like Charmander in proportion. So I was like, maybe this is too much like Charmander, and so I tried to pivot into something else, but then I discovered that this one kind of just looks like a Mudkip standing up. And so I was like, okay, we need a new angle for this one. What can a Gen 1 possibly look like that isn't a Charmander, or isn't, you know, what your standard starter would look like? And so I came up with the idea of like, okay, maybe we can make this more creature-like, you know, make it closer to its animal counterpart. And so that's why I made this really rough sketch, and I was like, okay, this is a direction that I can go for. A Sobble that is on all fours. And here are some other sketches of Sobble with its eyes open, which is also adorable in my opinion. For my design, I decided to shut its eyes, kind of like Cyndaquil, because I think it's just more cuter this way, and it does kind of look like it's crying if I kept it like this. I changed Sobble's body proportions to be something more lizard-like, so, you know, it's less lanky and more a bit thicker. I kept it in this almost frog pose. I know that Sobble isn't necessarily a frog, but, you know, they're reptiles. It's similar enough, I suppose. When I was watercoloring this, part of me was thinking that it almost looks like Mudkip. You know, it even has kind of the fin on its head. I know it's not a fin, but yeah, kind of like the iguana thing. So I tried my best to kind of go in a different direction when it came to like designing it. I kept the two-finger look that Sobble has, referencing the veiled chameleon, which is what Sobble is mostly based on. I tried to form kind of a subtle frown using the print on its face. You know, you can see the frown shape that I had with the line art. And I enlarged the tail to balance the design because I felt like it was a bit forward heavy. And overall, I tried to keep it as cute as the original design. I don't know if I succeeded though, but let me know what you think. Like I say with a lot of my videos, I think that feedback is a huge part of the creative process. And so what I usually do is post these to social media, usually on Reddit, and see what people think of them. Unfortunately, it's only been like 30 minutes since I posted this, and it's like 2 a.m. when I did, and so I don't think there's a lot of people seeing my post. Either that or that my post just sucks. But you know, I think it has like 20 upvotes at the moment. So we'll come back to it in a couple hours and see what people think. Hello, this is Thomas from the future, and unfortunately, I don't think that my post took off the same way my original starter trio thing did, you know, the one I did for Gen 9, but that's okay. Out of 5 comments here, 4 of these are positive. I think one of them recognized my channel. So hi, Bori Sinha, thank you so much. One user thinks Grookey is awful, Scorbunny cute, and Sobble better but still meh. That's fine, that's totally fine. And I totally get it. If I did this again, I would probably redo Grookey as well. I think, like, looking back at the sketches I made, maybe I would have gone with a cuter Grookey instead, but I don't know. And thank you so much, Booty Hugs, for defending me here. Thank you. And that's okay. Maybe the post didn't get as much traction as I wanted, but at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people still saw this and people took time out of their lives to comment on this, and I got the feedback that I wanted, so it's cool. And finally, here's what they all look like together with comparisons this time. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment down below saying, "Man, I love eating Pikachu." And if you leave that comment, I'll know you reached the end of it. And yeah, let me know if you want to see me do more of this, you know. Tell me what Pokemon I should do next, or maybe we could do trainers next time, or maybe the evolutions of the previous video. Who knows? It's up to you now. Thank you so much to my wonderful Patreons. If you want to join their ranks over here on Patreon, where I put you in the credits of my videos, then you can either become a YouTube member or a Patreon member. It doesn't matter where you join, they'll have parity in terms of like the perks, except, you know, you get some fancy little badges over here on YouTube. But yeah, otherwise you'll have access to the same things like project files for all of my stuff. And yeah, my plan for this month is to start posting weekly. And so, you know, I think that this series is really easy to do for me. You know, the Pokemon watercolor series just takes me 3 days to produce, you know, record, make art, and produce these videos. And yeah, I think I can slot this in between my main videos, which I now consider to be Render Breakdown, as well as the Nintendo Hero Shooter one. I guess I'll see you next Friday, you know, where we do another episode of Nintendo Rivals. But until then, I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.